What's up, brand builders? Stephen Hurahan here at the Brandmaster Podcast, and in this episode, I'm speaking with Bill Kenney, CEO of FocusLab, about his agency, how he's built a reputation for bold, strategy-driven branding, and what brand builders can learn from their approach. Now, I have to say, I really enjoyed this chat with Bill. I didn't expect him to go into the depths of the process-driven systems that they have, but that's exactly what he did, and it was absolutely enlightening. Now, Focus Labs has helped businesses to be the brand that customers want and competitors envy. Now, their work has led to $7.2 billion raised, 16 unicorns, and 24 acquisitions. In other words, Brand Labs don't just make clients look good, they help drive real business results using brand strategy. And in our chat today, we cover the biggest mistakes that agencies make in brand building, how to balance creative ambition with client constraints, and what makes branding a long-term business investment. We dive into a lot more than just that as well, including really detailed process-driven systems that Brand Labs use to bring their clients through. So if you want to learn from a branding agency the secrets of their strategists and how they drive real impact and results, then don't miss this episode of the Brandmaster Podcast. Welcome to the Brandmaster Podcast, a show specialized in helping branding professionals and entrepreneurs build brands using strategy, psychology, and creative thinking. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brandmaster Podcast. And I'm absolutely delighted to have on the show with me today, finally, because we've tried to do this quite a few times, Mr. Bill Kenney from Focus Labs. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, and I'm delighted we finally able to make it happen.
Yes, sir. Special event. I even brought my Christmas tree. Yeah, I know we've had to punt this a couple times. I'm excited we're finally doing it.
Yeah, beautiful. Look, I want to get stuck into it because the reason that I wanted to have you on the show is, you're the kind of agency that a lot of our listeners kind of aspire to be, and you're the agency that a lot of our listeners aspire to work with. Because you build the types of brands that make real impact. You only have to look at your website to see the numbers that you're talking about in terms of, the revenue, the investment raised, the unicorns built, and
Yeah.
you can see the impact there. It's not all fluff. It's not about colors. It's not about pixels. It's about business impact, and that's where I really want to go with this chat. But before we go there, can you give us a bit of a background as to how Focus Labs came together? You guys have been in business for a while now, but even going back to the early stages of putting all that together, what was that look like? What did that look like, and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So without going really long on too much of the back story, I'll just start by saying I'm essentially an art school student
Mm-hmm.
that realized that it was not going to make money and make a living through drawing and painting for the rest of his life. Not changed, but kind of found design in the art program in college and university. And junior, senior year, really fell in love with like the technical computer side of art, which for me was then design.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I was off to the races on what I knew I was good at and I liked doing, right? So people always say, find your passion. You never work a day in your life. I would almost call bullshit on that. Like, work is hard. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's hard, right? There are plenty of days you're like, oh, but that was really an unlock for me because of what I've just said. I do still love doing that, which is very much design, although I'm a business owner at this point. From there, I land in the small town of Savannah, Georgia. People start to realize, hey, you can help me redesign my business cards. Hey, I have a restaurant and my menu looks like crap. Hey, I have a realtor website and it looks terrible and the photography of the homes is even worse. Because I had an eye for design and enough technical ability, I could help with all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So in a small town, you can really become a big fish. And that's essentially what happened through like my freelance growth, which was very organic and
Mm-hmm.
not informed by any intention. Didn't say I'm going to move there and like start a freelance thing. It's just word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I then got past my capabilities. I met my business partner who is a web developer because I had just basically hit my wall on that skill. And then we start the business.
The
So
whole
at that
the whole
point,
Batman and Robin.
Yes, it's literally Batman and Robin, and that was probably 17 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and then we're off and running. That's when we say, hey, we can really make a go at this thing. But you still have to blend your, but we're not making a lot of money yet, so we're still working our normal jobs, and then all that feathers pretty quickly over a year or two into registering the name, registering the business, and
Hmm.
here we are, Focus Lab, and we're kind of off to the races. And then there's obviously a business evolution over the years of how do we even get to branding, but that's like the catalyst. That's
Yeah.
where the whole thing sparks and starts.
Yeah, yeah, and look, you know that's it's kind of how so many businesses come together. So, whether it's a professional brand builder listening or a brand leader listening, there's a real alignment there because it aligns with me as well. In terms of how you guys went from working with your small mom and dad startups to working with the types of brands that you are now, what did that evolution look like? And what were I would say, the one or two big kind of tipping points for you in terms of what you learned and how you were able to then package that up and give it to your customers, because obviously it goes from just being that kind of that freelancer, that kind of work for hire person,
Yeah.
to being a serious business and having processes and systems, and then really working on the output that you provide. What was the big tipping point or tipping points for you there along that evolution?
Yeah, there's a couple key tipping points in there, and I'll speak from different perspectives. We'll talk about process. We'll all talk about like how did you crack out of like local market?
Hmm.
How did you get through that ceiling? So people might find this interesting or even laugh at it, but really in those early years for us, let's call it like 2013, 2014, I got pretty big on Dribble.
Hmm.
I got to be like the fifth most followed person on the whole site. Who's counting? I obviously was. Uh, that was really instrumental in us getting out of the local market. I didn't
Mhm.
know that either. That was very organic. It was just like, geez, I'm in a small town. I don't really have a lot of designers around me. How am I going to find like my people? Okay, Dribble was the place. And it started to show as really like a big lead gen for us. Even though other people weren't using it that way or even getting that type of result from it, we were getting a lot of that, like $1 million a year in leads closed for us at that point.
Wow.
So going from small mom and pop in year one to say year 3 or 4 to now be working with San Francisco and New York City and now even like Sydney, Australia,
Mhm.
what I realized in that moment was, wow, you just, you know, common sense now, but like you got to go to where the people are.
Mhm.
Right. So that's like, that would be takeaway number one. Like you have to go to where the people are. Now, I would say the people are not there anymore for us. Right. So kudos to Dribble. I don't need to say anything negative about them. They really were a catapult for us. But now where our people are, let's call them CMOs, are
Mhm.
on LinkedIn. So I spend
Mhm.
all my time on LinkedIn. So be where your people are. If I had not done that, geez, Stephen, this would be a much different business, quite honestly. I think we might still be a 2 to 5 person team in Savannah, Georgia,
Mhm.
have saturated that market completely and trying to figure out how to squeeze more juice out of it, really waiting for new businesses to come into town.
Mhm.
But that brought us out of that. Now, as a result of that, we had to grow up a lot. Now we're playing at a higher level. We're reaching larger clients. Our processes, like you said, have to be better. They have to be tighter. To be fair, I'm not a super process oriented person, but growing the team thankfully forced me to be, meaning I
Mhm.
brought on people that were very process oriented. And they're like, hey, we can't operate the way you used to operate building this thing with these clients. We have to be doing this. We need to be thinking, we have to slow down. And I'd always be like, oh, I don't want to slow down. Just like, let's make stuff. This is great. So a lot of credit to those people on the team over the years that really process. You'll hear people on our team say process is our love language. I mean,
Mhm.
we are very process oriented.
That's and look, that's music to anyone's ears who has any kind of investment in your business, because to go from and a lot of creatives do this, right? They've got their processes in their head, and if you ask them how they get from point A to point B, it's a bit of, bada bing, bada boom, this and that, and bang, we're there. And in business, the more you learn, the more that it's all process driven. And if you're able to detail every little step and then put that into a document and then create a video around that and turn that into your onboarding and your processes and your systems,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
when you create the environment to bring more people in and to kind of to grow up as you said. I would imagine at some point, because to go from the mom and pop to the big businesses now, there is no school for that, right? It's
Yeah,
in the doing that you learn,
that's
and
right.
and in order to do that, you have to throw yourself into situations where you're like, oh
Yes.
shit,
Yeah.
we've said yes to this, now we have to deliver. Or walking into that boardroom where you're sitting down with a different caliber of fish. Was there one project that stands out for you where you landed it and you went, and then you push through, and the kind of getting to the other side of that was your big lesson?
Yeah, there's two that stand out. One's kind of silly, and one is that real kind of like take a deep breath moment that you were kind of referencing. The first that stands out of like oh boy, I feel like I'm kind of over my skis. I'm punching outside of my weight class moment was when we sold and landed our first five-figure project, 10,000 to be exact, right on the line of being five digits.
Mm-hmm.
I had to walk down the street. It was still local, but it was a tech company, right? So there's a little bit more money than a restaurant and more maybe
Mm-hmm.
brand awareness of the value and these types of things. And I had to go there and convince them that the project, a branding project, which for us at that point was literally just visual identity,
Right.
uh, it was going to be $10,000. And up to that point, projects for us were like 3,000. And I was terrified walking down there, and I had a button down shirt on and slacks. I don't wear any of that stuff anymore, right? It was
Like
just kind of
really
like,
outside. You were already
yes,
outside your comfort zone, but you did
yeah,
your best to make
yeah.
yourself more outside.
Collared shirt, had to sit at the big table and tell them. And they immediately were like, yes, we're excited to start. And I basically skipped all the way back to the office. I was like, oh my God, we've made it. So that felt like a moment of just being uncomfortable, but knowing like you got to stretch yourself, you got to go for it. And it worked. And that helped me then stretch more, probably. Right. But the deep breath moment, just really aligned with what you're talking about, is our Marketo project.
Right.
When we worked with Marketo, they reached, and I've interviewed Sarah Kennedy, the CMO of Marketo, who hired
Mhm.
us on our podcast, and we talk about this in there if people are interested.
Right.
She found us on Dribble. So going back to those early Dribble years,
Okay.
we were by all points really not the right shop for that project. We were very small, very unknown. I would say largely untested on a big stage like that. And for a company like Marketo to come in and for Sarah to say in the interview, like she said, I just went on Dribble. Every shot I seemed to like was a FocusLab shot. I hit you guys up. I loved your personality and hired you. I didn't even talk to other people. I shouldn't have probably even done the process that way from a hiring perspective. She said that in the interview. I'm like, yeah, yeah, we kind of felt the same way. So when they came through, they were asking things like, will you come out and do an on-site with us? Will you do C-suite interviews? Will you do this? Will you do that? We had never done any of it. Will you run brand archetype exercises? We had never done any of that stuff. Of course, we said yes. Sure, we will absolutely do those things. And then we had to go back to our team like, hey, we're going to try a whole bunch of new things. In credit and kind of uncomfort to our team, they were kind of like, oh, I don't know, we've never done these, and we like process, and we have to slow down and figure these things out before we go out there. And we're like, we don't have that opportunity.
Mm.
We just have to go. We got to make this work. This is going to be a real big kind of like tipping point moment in our portfolio and for us as a company. We're strong enough, we're mature enough to figure this out. Let's go. But it took a like,
Yeah.
okay, I hope this goes well. And I was part of the on-site, and we went out there and we ran it. And then now it still informs a lot of what we do. So that was really a big tipping project,
So,
was
so would
big
you say
success.
would you say a lot of your processes came together because you had to figure it out on the spot? You knew about these
Oh
types
yeah.
of things, but then you were asked to do it, and you had to take your theoretical knowledge and build quickly processes around them, and then show up in a room full of C-suite execs as if you've been doing this for years. Is that kind of how it all came together?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, that is generally how most things operate.
Yes.
And that is exactly how these things operate. Now, to I guess to kind of like safeguard what might sound crazy statement of like, yeah, you just try things and like you hope it works the best. You still have a base level, like I said, of like maturity and professionalism and intellectual ability to make that work though.
Hmm.
But yeah, you've never done it maybe at that scale, and you have to have, just like starting a business,
Yeah, yeah, and
the faith to like make the jump with the unknown on the other side.
yeah, and look, any pros in here who, because what we know, especially in the branding space, right? Because of course there are marketing degrees. You go out and you've got your your four P's and you got your processes right out the gate when it comes to marketing. But when it comes to brand strategy specific and merging business design and brand together, it was kind of like a blind spot for the education market because there was no direct path, and we
Sure.
all had to figure it out for ourselves. And those who have made it, like yourself, who have successful agencies, know the path. The path wasn't this straight line, but so many learning moments come through that, and that's why I have so much respect for those self-made agencies who have gone out there, who have just kind of rolled up their sleeves and and put themselves on the line. And I love to hear those success stories, and looking at agencies like yours and the brands that you're working with now, for any kind of freelancer starting off, or those in the early stages of their career, there are lessons to be learned from this chat about rolling up your sleeves and kind of throwing yourself out there and putting yourself about. I want to switch gears a little bit now, Bill, to kind of talk about how you work with clients at the moment. Okay, so
Yeah.
in terms of what your funnel looks like, I know I'm kind of going off piece here into marketing speak, but really when we break it down, this is the mechanics of how business work. Whether you're an agency or whether you're another type of business, it's all about putting yourself out there, attracting those leads, converting those leads, and delivering on that process. Can you talk to
Yep.
me a little bit about what that looks like in terms of, first of all, the marketing and the lead gen side of things to attract business? I know that LinkedIn is in there, but give me a little
Yeah.
bit more insight.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to jump back on one point though, because I think it's important to say to everybody listening.
Hmm.
Yes, your point is 100% correct. And I'm going to add on top of this idea that like it is hard to learn some of these things without doing them. Now
Hmm.
there is more content out there to learn.
Yep.
You produce a lot of that. Having said that, um, you learn a lot by doing it yourself and fumbling through it, dare I say, because you're going to learn the ways that are best for you.
Hmm.
There's 50 different ways to do one thing
Hmm.
in any skill or craft, kind of. Um, so I would say in us doing these things, not knowing a lot, we've learned what works really well for us and we've crafted our version of doing it. Now, in hindsight, I might be able to look back and say, oh, that overlaps a lot with how other people do it. But maybe there's a small twist that we do that we would have never adopted or done had we not just gone through it on our own, right? We might have just adopted somebody else's framework and we just say, this is the way to do it. And you just do it that way.
Hmm.
Um, so that there is value to understanding what you might should do, but then actually doing it without knowing anything. All right. So what does the marketing kind of funnel look like for us? So going back to what I would call like tip number one, if you want to actually start to build and grow a thing, go where the people are.
Hmm.
So like I said, for us in those early years, it was Dribble. Now it's very much LinkedIn. So when people find us now, I just got this document yesterday actually from our marketing team member on our side. She sent me the year report of how all the numbers broke down for where people came from. So these are not exact numbers because I can't recall them exactly. But if it's 100 total leads for the year, percentages would be like the lion's share, 70% are probably referral. Maybe not that high, maybe 50 to 60 in there is all referral. So
Mm-hmm.
that's now over 15 years of serving people well and creating relationships now feeds you back. That takes a while for that to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
that's now a heavy part of the machine. Places like LinkedIn, people will find us and reference we found you there. Now I have the book going, which maybe we'll talk about, maybe we won't.
We
But
will
now
indeed.
my book is out there. That drives a little bit. AI is really ticking up. Chat GPT, Perplexity. More and more people are mentioning that they're finding us from
Mm-hmm.
those avenues. All that to say, though, we just try to be present in the market, and we call it that presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's the number one part of our flywheel. In our company, we have a flywheel that I talk about every quarter. Number one is be present in the market because if people don't know about us, then the whole thing starts to fall apart, anyways. Number two is deliver sauce. That's an acronym for us, which is called Seek to Achieve Unforgettable Customer Experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, help them find you, be unforgettable when you work with them. And then the third is innovation, which is innovate on our processes, what we do, how we serve the market. Is the market changed and we need to do something different? And then go back to the top, be present again.
Mm-hmm.
So because presence is number one, marketing for us is a really big deal. We have 25, 26 person team, all full-time team members, and we have two full-time marketers
Mm.
plus myself. I'm essentially kind of like at least a 50% marketer in our company. So two and a half of our 25 people are doing marketing full time. That's building case studies. We built 18 case studies last year.
Wow.
As a 25 person agency, that has to be unheard of. I'm
Mm.
going to talk about this next week on LinkedIn. Like, I talked to so many agency owners of similar size. They put out a couple a year and they struggle to get the couple a year out.
Yeah.
We put out 18. I'm like, oh my God, that's more than one every single month. And our case studies are massive.
Yeah.
So I'm going really long and ranting a lot. We make a lot of noise, right? And our noise is very direct. It's branding, 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 branding. We do branding. This is what we care about in branding. Archetypes, attributes, architecture, strategy, verbal identity. We just talk and talk and talk so that we can kind of like penetrate every place we can.
Mm.
And that then feeds them in. Okay, so moving down the line of your question, when they speak with us, we start to talk about how we think we're different, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is all. That's our version of branding ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, we are an all senior team is something we pitch a lot, right? We have no contractors. We are B2B brand specific, so we have a niche branding. And then ultimately we talk about the intangibles. We sell ourselves a lot on the intangibles. So yes, you're going to get the tangibles, the actual outputs of the craft, but you're going to get all the other things, that customer experience I'm talking about. And that's not just like being really nice every day. That's helping and guiding customers. That's joining board meetings if we need to help facilitate a lot of that back and forth that needs to happen in these big projects. That's the stuff that doesn't end up in a bullet list and get priced in the scope,
Mm-hmm.
but adds so much
Yeah.
value. It's kind of
Absolutely.
like that's the actual magic of a project.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only reason they can be successful, because
Mm-hmm.
the craft at some point doesn't matter when you have a bunch of red tape and these other things going on.
Mm.
So that was a really long answer. I think I walked through most of
So,
it.
so let me dig into when you, so obviously, and I know this through personal experience as well, uh, you know, being out there and having conversations and putting your perspectives out there, you never know who's watching, who's listening. And there's this idea that I've manifested in my mind. I don't know if I've coined it or but I spoke to Matt Davies about it. And they're the silent listeners, and he gets a lot of business from the silent listeners. They're the ones who don't engage, who don't like or share or anything like that, but they're silently watching and
Yes.
waiting, and
Yes.
you're on their radar. And when they're ready to move, the likes of those CMOs, you just hear from them out of the blue, and
That's it.
they've been watching you for a year and a half, and then all of a sudden, you didn't know they were there, and then they become this huge piece of business. In
100%.
when they reach out to you, what's that? So of course we've got the idea of discovery calls and sales calls. How do you get them to that sweet place where you have them exactly where you want them? Is it a case of picking apart their challenges and their problems that they're having right now and alluding to a solution that you have?
Oh, interesting.
What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I just want to do a giant plus one on what you're talking about. That I think the internet generally calls it like lurkers. And that
Yeah,
word doesn't have to be bad.
yeah,
These lurkers are real, and I'll give you a very real contextualized example of that. Because my LinkedIn account is I don't know, Sales Navigator Pro paid account, whatever the hell
hmm
tier I'm in. I'm able to see how long people have been following me and what date we connected on. And that's very interesting to me. And that's kind of the primary reason I pay 99 a month, just to know that one stat. So when somebody reaches out, like this woman did in Q4 last year, who I'd never seen interact on any of my posts, has never ended up in a DM or anything, and says, "Hey, I've got a pretty sizable project. Who should I talk to?" Or actually, better yet, they come through the contact form. I can take that name, put it in LinkedIn. Who is this person? Oh, we're
hmm
connected.
yeah,
I didn't even know we were. Oh, we've been connected for a year and a half. To your
hmm
point, that's generally the time. It's
hmm
about a year, year and a half, or it's like immediate. It's like 2 weeks.
yeah,
Um, that's like a $250,000 project,
mm
right? So you can't just rely on the people that are interacting with you all the time. A lot of times that's going to be people like you and I, right?
hmm
More peer,
more peers
not
and
really like big active buyer. Big active
yeah.
buyers just watching.
And I like the idea that that is because as peers, we have the conversations, and it's the customers on the sidelines watching those conversations
Yeah.
and listening
Yes.
to the answers and looking for the cues to say they know what they're talking about. That's who I need to work with.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Or even I like their energy. It seems
Mm.
like a good person, right? So
Personality. Yeah.
when I post every day, my goal is not to get a gajillion likes. I obviously want those things to grow, but I know there's people watching, and I'm just trying to be on the billboard of the internet every day. So when
hmm
people are driving by, scrolling by, my billboard is active. I don't need them to engage every day.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we then get them maybe over their tipping point of maybe choosing us
Yes,
or
that's
in a
it. Their
call?
tipping point to know that, yeah, these are the guys.
Thankfully for us, by the time people reach us, mostly they are very much an active buyer. They're
hmm
no longer like a tire kicker.
Yeah.
So we're probably down to two or three people.
hmm
To jump ahead to actually one of the things that I think was most interesting in your question is like, do we propose what we think the solutions are that give them maybe a taste or a flavor? Some might call that, if we go too far down that line, spec work. Right? Do we
hmm
set thing? We did spec work for Marketo. We never
Yeah.
do spec work, even
No.
in those early years. We did it because we were like, we're going to get this damn
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a time and a place for that. Generally, 98% of the time, we don't do any of that.
hmm
What we do is we either confirm or deny a lot of what they're seeing and feeling from our own lens just in a call. Right. We
hmm
can look at things and be like, yeah, this is wildly confusing. This doesn't make sense. Or you look very outdated, or these various surface level things. We can have that in the call, but a lot of it is personality fit,
hmm
honestly. I think what people enjoy most, and we hear this in our post project interviews, it just felt totally different talking to y'all. And
Yeah.
they get that even in the sales process. This type of vibe,
Yeah.
right? Very personal, very casual, relatable.
hmm
That is often the tipping point. For the people that don't care about that, maybe we don't score high and they don't pick us, right?
Mm.
And that's fine too.
Yeah, but like even that, don't you find that by being that version of yourself, and not trying to win every single job, that you tend to repel the clients that would probably not end up being a good project for either one of
100%.
you, and attract the ones who are. So, you know, you're saying everything that I align with and that I 100% believe in, that putting yourself out there, talking about the things that you're passionate about, not necessarily to sell anything, but to have your opinion, knowing that your customers are on the periphery watching you and watching your
Yeah.
conversations. That is the front lines of your business. That's the marketing, and that acts as the first step of your funnel. In terms of when you kind of get to that point where it's all go, we're locked in. When you get the ball rolling with the client, talk to me about how that all unfolds, because
Yeah.
different, as you've said before, different agencies have different approaches, um, different onboarding, whether it's a discovery call or whether it's spec work, as you said, for way back when. In terms of how you onboard your clients and bring them through from challenge to outcome, what's the 10,000 foot view of that?
Yeah, I'll try to go fast and try to hit a lot of points on this because I think this part is probably going to be the most interesting part.
Right.
Let's be real for most people in the conversation. All right,
100%.
let's pull back the curtain. So when a client says, "Hey, we're ready to go," now we are basically plugging into our process. Everything before is a little bit more thinking and feeling, right? There's lurkers, like, there's process, but not really. Now we're in a project.
Yep.
So step one, sales has a PM and sales handoff meeting. Hey, sold the project. I'm going to bring PM into the loop. I'm going to let the project manager on that project know everything I know from the sales process. So there's like a information handoff there.
Mm-hmm.
The new client is also in that meeting, so relationship can be handed over as well. It's not just thrown over a fence. We found that to be really valuable and very easy to add into the process.
Mm-hmm.
PM then starts firing off all types of things. We've got brand discovery questionnaires that go out that we want the team to fill out. We've got sometimes digital archetype exercises, attributes exercises that they want to run on their own. We don't need to fly out there. Maybe that's not worth the cost, kind of thing.
Yep.
So they start to get essentially a bunch of their homework. The client does, and
Nice.
they're in that window for about a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
And on our backside, we're ramping up all our systems. Okay, create a project in Basecamp, get the project team on our side, the designer, writer, strategist, and the PM would already be accounted for in there, into that channel. Is there a Slack channel? Generally don't do a lot of that with the client.
Mm-hmm.
Start to get their recurring weekly meeting on the calendar and working with what hopefully is their PM or point person,
Yep.
not their lead, but more the logistics person on their side.
Yes.
Recurring meet. So there's a lot of PM activity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we have the big kickoff meeting. Before the kickoff, the strategist, if that's a 2-week window,
Mm-hmm.
the strategist the week before the kickoff is probably starting to consume some of those documents that client is now sending through. That would be like early discovery, just to get their head around the client and the project. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time we hit the kickoff meeting, which is a 1-hour window on a Monday or Tuesday, that really starts the project. Now the client project team meets our project team, and now we're really off to the races. A lot of question asking, relationship building, kind of
Yep.
there's segue in the beginning to just talk about who are you, where do you live, what do you do,
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now we go heads down. This is not a 10,000 foot view. I'm basically telling you my book. Now we go heads down for anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks, and that's the strategy phase of our projects.
Yep.
Designers are not fully engaged yet. Writers are not fully engaged. They'll come in at the tail end of that. Strategists at about the second or third week start to ship, and this is an important note in our process, start to ship deliverables on Fridays. From that point on, we literally ship a deliverable to that client every single Friday.
Okay.
The
So,
cadence is a drumbeat.
so an example of a deliverable would be?
Okay, so the big the
I
first
don't want to break
initial,
your momentum. You're going really
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Just the
The like a key strategy document, which would be
yes.
like we've
Okay.
looked at your audience and your competition,
Yep.
and we've basically built a 20-page document covering all of our findings.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. Easy. I think in terms of design, because I'm a designer, when we get to design rounds, right, it's that here are your 3 options. It's the first round of design. Which path should we take? That would be a deliverable.
Mm-hmm.
So every Friday, a sizable deliverable goes out. I would also note we send, and this is something we learned through our own process as really valuable. Every deliverable gets a paired video. They used to be Zoom videos. Now they're Loom videos.
Yep.
So the deliverable goes out. The person who did the work sends a Loom with it, talking about
Mm-hmm.
what they did, why they did, what they need back from the client. All that goes into Basecamp, out the window. Okay, so we keep marching down the line. Strategy has set the North Star for the project.
Yep.
Now design starts to run its track.
Mm-hmm.
Verbal identity starts to run its track.
Mm-hmm.
as you get deeper into the project, then web might kick in,
Yep.
ultimately ending on the guidelines. And it just week to week to week to week. Some projects are 12 weeks, some projects are 28 weeks, but you're week to week. It's the same beat.
Nice, nice. That sounds like a very, very well-oiled machine, my man. That took
It's
15, 17 years to
yeah,
develop?
yeah. I would tell you, and I'm glad you said that because it actually reminds me of a point I was going to say earlier. That process either is the gold star for some of our clients
Hmm.
or the demise.
Right.
It really, like, for if you go onto our G2 and you look at FocusLab G2 reviews, everyone's going to say the highlights: process, well-oiled machine, they got their
Yeah.
act together. But and other clients might say that was really hard for us to follow because, and I need to be careful not to knock these people, but their companies operate like this,
Yes.
and they're
And
trying to plug into ours that operates like this, and it's really hard.
and that's it. And like from my perspective, I can 100% relate to what you're saying because when you engage with a business and you're ready to work with them, they have to be ready to 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 step up to the plate.
Correct.
And the right agency kind of brings a business out of where they were to where they are, not just through the deliverables, but through the process that you take them through.
Yes. Hallelujah.
And yeah, your well-oiled machine sounds like an education in and of itself, especially for service-based businesses who you're building a brand for, because they should be
Yep.
taking notes and going, let's do that to
You can't
that.
imagine how often that happens.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we hear that multiple times every year. We've
Right.
adopted some of your process. This has been so different and clean. We love the idea of doing it this way and repeatable. And
Yeah.
but yeah, going back to the G2 review, we had a new one come on yesterday, and under the dislikes,
Mm.
it wasn't a dislike, but I love it. And I'm going to post this on LinkedIn as well. Hey, everything's content. Uh,
Love it.
this guy basically said under the dislikes, if you can't get your C-suite to fully engage in a project with a company like this, don't even start because it's going to be really hard and terrible for you. So to your
Yeah,
point, like, people need to be all in. You can't be half in, half out.
that's it. That's it. That's so funny. I wrote an email yesterday and I said brand strategy is not for part-timers. That was the
Yeah.
starting line of my email. And if anyone was in any doubt as to the importance of processes in agency businesses, but any really service-based, any business at all, you just have to listen to the last 15 to 20 minutes of this chat to understand how what a well-oiled machine looks like. That that was absolutely amazing. Before I let you go, I do want to get kind of inside the boardroom with you and ask about a project that you've done that was the most fulfilling for you in terms of this company came to us with this challenge.
Mhm.
We saw the potential, but the work that we did brought them to this level that we you know we anticipated, but never knew it could kind of go there. What project stands out to you that has been the most fulfilling for you?
I'll take three different tracks, but I'll make it short. I think I've
Okay.
said that so far, and I have not made it short.
It's been valuable though, so nobody's going to correct it.
what There's a couple that jump out for different reasons. I think that's why it's interesting to break it up because not everything's about money and success.
Mm.
The first
Here,
project that
here.
stands out is a project that we should have never probably worked on in every regard. It's a small beach arcade in Delaware, Rehoboth
Wow.
Beach, Delaware. The son, co-founder, father and son, of this beach arcade hit up FocusLab proper to say, "Can you help me?" Right? That should never happen. He probably, like everybody else, should come to our site and go, "Oh shit, big tech companies, I can't afford them."
Yeah.
He hit us
Type,
up.
type form filter, by the way.
Yeah,
Filter at the
yeah.
left side.
Uh, we were so enamored by the fact that a beach arcade, wow, that would be awesome. We would
Yeah.
love to work. Wait, what's your budget? Oh God, okay, we'll probably barely break even. We're doing it. And what an enjoyable, fun project for
Yeah,
our
nice.
company and our team. What a fun experience for that owner, and man, they've just been killing it. So that is
Wow.
really rewarding just from a just a good human perspective.
Mm,
Like the stars were just right for that one to work. Now, from a go on to great success, I think about Braze. Braze was a really big project for us. They're now a public company. They
nice.
were probably a Series C at that point. They were called Appboy. They went through a name change with Lexicon. We then stepped in after the name change to take over the brand work, which was largely visual identity still for that project. Um, and man, they've been really successful. They've still even, I was just on LinkedIn yesterday, and they're touting the award they won on their brand refresh, I think they're calling it.
Okay.
And I'm celebrating with them, but what I was humbly inside celebrating is it's still the same stuff we made it. They kind of changed made they kind of changed the color palette and kind of brought the assets maybe a little bit more forward in some ways, but
Mm,
it's still very much the bones of what we built.
mm,
So for me, that's rewarding, right? Because
yes.
I'm like, that thing is still making it. They're not just wiping it out and doing something completely different.
Mm,
Um, so that's a good kind of growth success story. And then we're working on a project right now that I can't say the name, but I think it's important for people to understand and realize it's again back to the money thing or the fame of a project name. For me, I don't quite honestly I don't give a shit about any of that.
mm.
Sure, I need the company to make money so that we can all be fed and stuff. I just like to work with good people. This whole thing started from just being in a small city and just working with good people and
And
trying to help
and
people, right?
that's your experience coming through there.
Yeah, so for this project we're on right now, it's a really big project, right? Big fish, which can generally be stressful. It's a number two and a number three have merged to take on the number one in the whole category, right? So
Wow,
it
that's
it
interesting.
it,
I
it probably
love
could
that.
have high success and all these things.
Yeah,
What I take away most from that project still right now, and they launch in a couple weeks, the people on that project are just the best people.
nice.
Generally, in a big project, that is not always true. It can be true.
Mm,
Bigger projects just come with a different level of stress and kind of people character sometimes, not to
yeah,
broad stroke all big projects.
100%.
This project is big and the people are wonderful. They're
Yeah,
the type of people you would literally send a Christmas present to because you just want to be friends with them.
nice.
That's what brings me joy.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different tracks of what makes me happy with
Yeah,
it.
and as I said, that's your experience coming through there because look, to a certain extent, you have probably brought Focus Labs to a place where you never really envisaged before, to a level of success
Correct.
that you're at least at the very basic level proud of or content with, where it becomes then more about the who do I want to work with and how do I want this culture to be, the types of experiences we want to have with our customers, and that can really produce the best work. So it's a really really good example of the fact that your most successful projects aren't always about the biggest clients that you got, or the accolades that you got off the back of it, but the experience that you had in building it to where it got. So, I really really like that one. Um, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Bill. You've really um, shed to light some really important things about inside an agency that's doing so well. One of the other things I noticed, I'm going to stop myself asking more and more questions, but one thing that I really that fascinated me and intrigued me was your focus on your business impact, because you spoke about
Yeah.
how much investment you've helped to raise, and uh, there's this big idea of what's the ROI of branding because it's so fluffy. When you're in the advertising world, you can talk about CPC, and you can talk about ROI in more direct terms, but you
Yeah.
guys are able to pull these solid numbers out. How are you doing that in terms of putting those metrics together, or is that intentional from the beginning, or is it a case of has this brand done since we've worked with them? How does that work, bringing the business impact into what you're doing to the forefront?
Yeah. Um, I'm glad you asked that because it's so important. Really, in going back to kind of that funnel and what customers are looking for,
Mm,
at this point, our clients need to see impact, right? It's no longer just my menu looks stupid. I need a better menu.
yeah,
Right now, it's like, no, we're spending substantial money on this and I need to know how I'm going to get it back. That's the CMO's biggest issue up to
yeah,
like the CFO and the CEO.
yeah,
So for a long time, we've struggled with like, well, how the hell are we going to show this? Because it is true. Brand is hard to measure, but it
yeah.
is measurable.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've realized is we can't be reliant on the client.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even a shade on them. That's just, it's really hard to say, like, give us all your website traffic numbers and we're going to check back in. And like, they're busy, like, they're like doing stuff.
Yeah.
So what we've kind of narrowed it down to is things that are more public facing, which is fundraising rounds, acquisitions, valuations, these things that we can go find ourselves. Further, in the interviews I do on our YouTube channel, I ask these questions to our clients very specifically. What impact have you seen? And I get all types of different answers. I get answers like, our recruitment is so much better now. I've had people literally in video say, we saved 20 to 30 grand and not needing a recruiter because people want to work for us now because we look a certain way, we speak a certain way, we're attracting that talent.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people in those interviews say, I feel so much more confident going in for them now, meeting with their client and selling their services because the way the brand presents itself to the world. So how much is like a CEO's own confidence worth? I don't know. I can't measure that and put that on a stat on the website. It's worth a lot to that guy in that call, right? So there's all these ways that we try to bring those points to the surface. But yeah, what you're mentioning is the stats we have right on our website.
Yeah, yeah, and
Which
look, it's
huge now.
tangible, and it's yeah, and I like it because it's something that a lot of agencies struggle with, and it's something also for clients as well because they want to be able to hang their hat on something that's not so fluffy, and
Yeah.
I think we need to do better jobs as agency leaders to first of all benchmark and then to really pull out the tangible metrics because brand shapes everything. You know, you might have an advertising campaign that went really well, but if there's a brand strategy behind that, then that is attributable to the brand strategy. It's really about being forward thinking, benchmarking, and then pulling those numbers out. And I love what you guys are doing there. I love what you guys are doing with your processes in general, the work you're doing, the clients you're working with. Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And I have a funny feeling we're going to chat again.
I think we will chat again. Just before we jump, for the people, I held up the book really quick. I'll do a quick plug.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, 100%. Conquer your
conqueryourrebrand.com.
rebrand.
That's all you have to do. Conqueryourrebrand.com. Yay, we got the URL. It was out there. This
Really? You
this
did?
book is literally our whole process. I
Wow.
wrote the whole process in the book. Now it will change and it will evolve, but the bones of it are the same. Of the 12 chapters, I want to say 7 of them are process from that PM onboarding all the way through to supporting a client post launch. The first couple chapters are convincing the CEO they need to do this. After that, it's all process, process, process. So if
Nice.
people are interested in that, there you go.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll drop what's the URL? So those listening in the car, they don't have to go to the show notes. What's the URL?
Conquer your rebrand
All one
dot
word,
all one word.
.com.
Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll drop it in the show notes anyway, as I will any other links or channels we spoke about in this. As I said before, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll be in touch.
See you out there.
Want to take a second to show some appreciation. I appreciate every single one of our listeners, but I have a soft spot for listeners who share the love. A shout out to Jen Ago 1000 from the US, best brand strategy thought organization out there. I've consumed tons of books, videos, and podcasts to better train myself as a brand manager and make my way into brand strategy. The Brand Master series is the most well organized and clearly articulated framework and philosophy I've come across. I use this series as a regular reference and have been winning results in my expanding role. I'm super grateful for the inspiration, empowerment, and wisdom that Stephen's work offers. Jen Ago 1000 from the United States, thank you so much for your review. I really appreciate it. If you want to share the love and possibly get a shout out on the podcast, please take a couple of minutes to leave a review on your favorite platform. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more brand strategy techniques to level up your skills, make sure you check out brandmasteracademy.com. There's plenty of free resources and premium content for you to download and get you going. If you'd like to join our Facebook group full of like-minded brand strategists, all learning from each other, then find us by searching for the Brand Strategy Community, where you can find exclusive content for members as well. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give us an honest review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listened, and make sure you tune in for the next episode of the Brandmaster Podcast.